Hey, how's it going? So today we're going to be talking about what I'm doing with all of these lithium cells that I've been recycling and what the battery that I'm building with them is going to look like, how long I want it to last, and all the other physical specs that I want the battery to have. So let me give you guys a rundown of the general plan of what I want to do with all of these lithium cells. Essentially, I want to build as big of a battery as possible, and I want to be able to power my house while the power's out for 2 whole days straight. Now, that's a big deal because there's a lot of stuff you run in a house, but I'll talk a little bit later about the numbers, and I think I can pull it off. Right in front of me, I've got 18650 cells that I've pulled out of laptop batteries, and then there's also a couple lawnmower batteries that I've taken apart as well. Here is the crate of more laptop batteries that haven't been broken down yet. So there's approximately 40 some in there right now. And I plan to get a lot more, and I'm basically just looking for anything that has these kind of 18650 cells in it. Anything I can find. These ones over here came out of some battery packs that I don't even know what they were for. They were some weird format, but they have a ton in them. You can see I've just been ripping batteries apart. After that, it goes through testing. I'll throw them in here. This is a custom battery charger and discharger that I designed, and it takes 4 cells at a time, as you can see right here. The reason I've got them propped up like this is because the fan is blowing air over the heatsink on the inside, which is cooling down my power resistors. It's also cooling down the batteries as I charge them up and discharge them. The reason I have that is it tests the cells to make sure they can get up to full capacity. It just drains them after that. After they go in to be capacity tested. This is my battery charger, and essentially all you do with it is take a cell, load it in, and it starts charging. It'll come up with a milliamp hour number by the time it's finished charging. I'll take the completely drained cells out of the battery discharger and put them in the charger. And then by the time they're done charging, they'll have a number for milliamp hours, and I'll write it on the cell and put it into storage. Now, it's not ideal because when you're charging a cell, there's heat losses. The battery charger can't tell the difference between like heat losses and actual power that makes it into the cell. The number for the actual capacity on the cell will be inflated because of that issue. A way to fix that would be to discharge capacity test them. Unfortunately, I don't have the equipment to do that right now. And even if I did, I wouldn't want to switch over to it, because then my capacity measurements would be skewed after that point. I'm kind of stuck with using charging method of capacity testing because I've tested all my other cells that way. I would have to retest all my existing cells to get the discharge capacity number, which I don't want to do. It's okay, it's fine, as long as I test the capacity in the same way on all of them. I'll get into a little later the program I use to calculate the battery pack so that they can actually be properly balanced. And I'll get into what actually balancing the packs means a little later. I've got lots of lithium cells, and let's say I get them all tested. What am I going to do with them then? Pardon the mess. They're going to go into this server cabinet. I don't know exactly how many U's it holds. Inside of it are going to be a couple of servers, a network switch, and a whole lot of batteries, and hopefully a rack mount UPS at some point. I've got a non-rack mount UPS I'm using right now. There's a whole bunch of stuff I plan to do with this cabinet. One of them is filling it with batteries. These are old salvaged units out of what used to be in this cabinet. They used to hold a bunch of little like rack mount modules, but I ripped them all out. I think I'm going to try to put all the batteries in those, or scrap those entirely and build a custom rack mountable enclosure for all of the batteries. It'll be really nice being able to house all of the batteries in this server rack, and I'm hoping it'll keep it all nice and contained. One thing I'll get into a little later is my concerns about the weight. One cell, if I show you here, weighs about 44 grams. This one's weighing in at about 46. On average, it's supposed to be about 45 grams a cell. You see that one there is 43 grams. They vary a little bit. Now that I've talked about the lithium battery situation, let's jump over to some of the programs I'm going to use and some of the math behind what's going on here. This document here contains a lot of information about all of the cells that I've collected so far, and a bunch of estimates and numbers that I've made based on that data. You can see here in this first column, we have the data for 234 cells that I've tested so far. The average cell capacity in milliamp hours is 2,372. That's pretty good. I was expecting around 2,500, but considering these cells are used, 2,300 is not bad at all. Out of all the cells I tested so far, the capacity is around 2 kilowatt hours. To add to that, out of all of the cells I've tested so far, only 9 have been bad. That means we have a failure rate of around 3.8%. I was expecting it to be a lot higher, maybe upwards of 10 or 15%, so I'm really happy to see that this number is so low. The amount of cells that I have right now is around 678, and that includes the cells that I've tested. Counting for faults, it's estimated that around 651 of these are going to be good. Based off that number, all of the cells I have right now have a 5,567 watt-hour capacity. To calculate some of the further metrics, I wanted to have a baseline of what my house would draw under a power outage situation. To get this number of 400 watts, it's actually based off of measurements I took with a watt meter when the power was out last time. On average, our house would draw about 400 watts running the fridge, the deep freeze, some lights, and the water pump every once in a while. This will be the baseline for how much power the house is going to draw. Based on this number, if we were just to manufacture the battery out of all the cells we have right now, the house would be able to run for almost 14 hours. 13 hours it's okay. That's about the length of a normal power outage. But for some of the bigger storms, they can last upwards of a week. I would like to have it run for at least 2 days. That means to get up to 48 hours of runtime, we would need an extra 1,630 cells. As I'll go over later, I think it is probably doable to be able to collect that many more. So to put some of this in perspective, I collected some data about the EcoFlow Delta. One EcoFlow Delta has a battery capacity of 1,260 watt hours. So right now, all the cells I have tested just in this document would be equivalent to around 1.5 EcoFlow Deltas. The amount of cells I have right now, so that's 678 cells, would mean I have around 4.4 EcoFlow Deltas. But to power my house for the full 48 hours, I would need the equivalent of 15.23 EcoFlow Deltas. You can see right here why this project doesn't scale well with normal commercial options. I want to be able to run 400 watts for 2 days. That's the goal. Now we're going to get into how long is this project actually going to take. At the current rate, I can test about 8 cells a day. That is very low. If we want to get to that 48-hour mark at 400 watts, we're going to need 2,074 more cells. So to test that, it would take 259 more days. I want to get that number down, and I'm actually going to talk about how I plan to greatly increase the amount of cells I can test per day. To put in perspective the amount of batteries I need on top of what I have already, I would need 272 more laptop batteries. And that's most likely what I'm going to be looking at getting. That's been the source of most of my batteries so far. The testing is the main bottleneck, not the ability to tear down the laptop batteries. I can do that quite quickly. So far I've taken apart about 4 lawnmower batteries, but I just thought it'd be interesting to include it as a metric as how many more I would need. My crate will hold about 50 laptop batteries, so I'd need 6 more of those crates. And there's the total number of overall cells I would need for this battery. So I'd need 2,248. Now that number is not exact. I plan to have a 48 volt battery, and that's probably going to be 14 cells in series. So this number is going to have to be divisible by 14. So it's going to be either a little higher or a little lower than 2,248. Getting into some of the other metrics like weight, as we mentioned earlier, the weight of each cell is about 45 grams. So all the cells I have right now, based on that number, would weigh about 30.51 kilograms or 67.27 pounds. To build the full battery, based off that 45 gram weight, we'd be looking at 101 kilograms or 223 pounds. And I need to make sure that where I'm putting these batteries can hold that much weight. Let's say 48 hours wasn't achievable and I just wanted to do just 1 day. We'd be looking at 24 hours, and you can see how some of these metrics have changed. Already the project would take me a lot less time. I'd only need 900 more cells, and the battery itself would only weigh 111 pounds. I don't plan to finish this project super quickly. I think it will probably take me another year or two. The number of cells per day is also going to increase, which will reduce the length of the project. That's a basic overview of what the battery is going to look like. So now we're going to go over the software that I use to create all of the different cell groups. The name of this website is rePackr. It's free to use. You can just navigate to it on any web browser that you have. This will be the page you see when you first get to the website. So you'll want to click on Packer. It'll bring you then to the pack builder. You have to input your data as a comma separated or comma delimited list of cell capacities. I just had that Excel document that you saw earlier, and of course the Excel document, I formatted it all in one column. That means that instead of it being comma delimited, it's actually return delimited, I guess. I just quickly created a Python script to convert that return delimited CSV into a a text document. So after running that script, I ended up with a text document that looks a little something like this, which is actually what you want. This is all the cells from that document I showed you earlier. And if I copy them all and input them into the pack builder and click add cells, so all of that cell data is now entered into the website. So if we want to make a 48 volt battery, that's either 13 or 14 cells in series. So we can tell it we want 14 cells in series. Our big battery is going to have a lot of cells in parallel. We'll have to calculate that number later, but basically it's going to be as many as we possibly can. So it's going to be the maximum amount of cells we have divided by 14. In this case, we have 234 cells. So we're going to want to divide 234 by 14, and that gives us 16.7. So the maximum we can have is 16. Then if we click generate packs, it gives us this nice list of all the batteries. It lists some very important metrics at the top. So the nominal voltage, assuming 3.6 volts per cell, is 50.4 volts. So that's really good. And then we have 38 amp hours and almost 2 kilowatt hours. The reason it's lower is because if we scroll all the way down here, you can see it had to not use all of these cells down here. The reason we want to use this program and not just put all the cells in some random order is for balancing purposes. So you can see some metrics for the divergences from all the other packs. And you can see this one's only 4 milliamp hours. This one's only 1 milliamp hour. So you want them to all be as close in capacity as possible, so that when you charge them up, one group of parallel cells doesn't charge faster than the other. The little bit of discrepancy caused by small differences is handled by the BMS, but the BMS can only handle so much balancing current. A lot of times too, that balancing current, unless you've got an active BMS, is just going to be lost through a bleed resistor or something like that. So you want to have your cell groups as close together in capacity as you can. The nice thing about this website too is it has a compact view. When you're sorting through cells and you want to go through and know which cells you've sorted, you just click on them like this. For me though, I don't usually use the web interface because I don't leave my computer on all the time. So I'll go up here and I'll export a CSV document. I would highly recommend using this website for making your battery packs if you're going to do it in this way. So to add to what I was saying earlier about series and parallel groups, so let's say we have one cell right here. Now let's say we have a bunch of these cells in parallel. So they're all connected, positive to positive, negative to negative, just like this. So this is one parallel group of cells. So this would be 3.6 volts. If we want more voltage, we have to take these groups and put them in series. So earlier when I was showing the rePackr website, you can see that each of these boxes represents one of these parallel groups of cells. Let's say this was 1 milliamp hour, this is 1, this one was 1, and this one was 2. So that'd be a total of 5. Then you could have like 0.5, 0.5, 2, and 2. So this would be 5. This one would also be 5. It tries to keep them as even though the cell capacities are all kind of different. The overall parallel cell capacity is the same between cell groups. And the reason why you want to do this is because you're going to have the same current flowing through all of your cell groups. Let's say this cell bank down here has significantly less capacity. It's actually going to charge faster and have a higher voltage than all of the rest of them. So you might have this one sitting at like 4 volts instead, and that's not good. Now your cell group is out of balance and it's just a mess. You want them to all be the same capacity so that they can all charge at the same rate, discharge at the same rate, and not get out of sync with each other. I also just want to talk briefly about the upgrades I'm planning to make to the current system I have right now. So right now I have two 3000 watt modified sine wave inverters, a 30 amp solar charge controller, a 1000 watt grid tie inverter, and 3 deep cycle lead acid batteries. What I would like to have is this unit here. This is an all-in-one. This is a Solarc unit. I believe that's in American, so around $3,000 American. But you can see it's got really good specs. So the maximum PV power is like 10 kilowatts. It's a 120 volt unit. You can draw almost 5,000 watts from the batteries continuously. This number right here is really important because it's going to completely dictate whatever you can run with it. 4,800 watts for me is perfect. So at any given point, we would be running lights, the fridge, the chest freezer, and the water pump all at the same time. So that's 2,560 watts, which is well below the maximum power draw from this unit. One of the most important things about this unit that I like is you can set the battery charge and discharge voltages yourself. You can see here battery agnostic. This just means you can use any kind of batteries with this thing that you want. Applications, 48 volt lithium or lead acid charging. And it supports voltages well above around 58.8, which will be the maximum charge voltage of our batteries. And it does grid tie. So if your batteries are full, it pushes power back to the grid, which is excellent. That's what you want. That solar energy that you're generating at all times, it's always going somewhere. And it does automatic transfer switch. So this acts pretty much like a UPS. Power goes out, it will automatically transfer over to the inverter, and it will keep whatever sub panel you have powered off this on at all times. To put in an application to have a net meter put in here in New Brunswick, you need to have an application put in to the power company, and they have to approve of all of your equipment. So currently, the grid tie inverter I have is not CSA approved. So that means they would not approve it, and my request would get denied. But this unit is a trusted brand. It would get approved, and it would make submitting the documentation for the net meter a lot easier. One of the last things I want to go over is equipment that I'm getting to upgrade the charging and discharging setup I have for testing cells right now. So I'd be looking at getting one of these for increasing the amount of cells I can test per day to dramatically decrease the time this project is going to take. You can see here it's only about $60 Canadian, so that's not bad at all. And this unit can handle 8 cells at a time. Alright, so that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you liked the video, drop a like, it really helps, and stay tuned, because there's some videos in the future I'm going to be doing, specifically around the data center. So if you like the kind of content that I'm making, be sure to subscribe, and thanks for watching.